Morning everyone, it's Rob Watson, the module leader for TECH3501 Community Media Leadership. At least that's what it says here. So it must be right. This is a short introduction video to the main topics that we're going to cover in the first week's lecture and some of the activities that we'll look at in the workshop. As ever, what I'll do each week is I will create a PowerPoint presentation, but I don't share the PowerPoint slides because it's basically just text and pictures. If there's any essential diagrams or tables or anything, that'll be included in the notes. And as ever, if you need to download a copy, go to the DMU Commons wiki and look for the TECH3501 page. And the wiki is, you should be able to chant this in your sleep by now, is wiki.our.dmu.ac.uk. So the main topics that we're going to cover this year, the overall aim of the module this year is it's called leadership, community media leadership, and we thought it was a really important that we kind of kick the ball up further up the field, if you like. And one of the ways to do that is think about how you might train other people to undertake community media projects and activities, how you might apply for funding, how you might network and build relationships with other people in the community media movement around the world, and how you can really become a kind of an advocate of social change and social solidarity. So the focus, and you're going to be working with John Costa as well as myself. John's going to be running the workshops again this year. So the focus this year is to think about what community development principles are that we need. So last year we looked at the idea of kind of community media. Actually, it's about making community development projects. It's about compensating for things like voice poverty or a lack of civic engagement or a lack of neighbourliness or a lack of awareness in our social situations. This year, it's about kind of saying, how can we put in place the kind of support structures, the kind of programs, the kind of the more formal development systems and approaches that need to, how do you train people for community media? How do you communicate with people? How do you recognise which kind of people can do what kind, are drawn to what kind of roles and kind of issues? And how do you use community media as a platform and as a sustainable approach to social change and social development? So we're going to start off by having a discussion about some of the recent events that have taken place over the year, in particularly the kind of Grenfell Tower incident, shocking incident. But then we're going to look at some definitions and a kind of framework of what our expectations of community development might be, and kind of what definitions of community drive these frameworks. And then we'll look at the idea that how do we facilitate community development then? So if we're looking for social change and we're looking for an enhanced sense of social solidarity and an enhanced sense of participation and ownership and discussion and challenge and all the things that we recognise as being valuable as and important and necessary for sustainable social change, then what are those things based on? This week is really just a kind of an introduction to these issues, and over the duration of the module, we're going to be looking at some of these issues in more detail. So we'll go through things like, kind of models of economic development, and then we'll look at the kind of different theories that account for community development or community media action, community media for change, communication for change, if you like, and we'll look at some of the kind of key structure and principles of that, and kind of some of the different ways of thinking and what difference they make to how we actually work in practice. And then we'll look at kind of a model of community media participation and evaluation, because I think one of the things we started to do last year, but we kind of need to revisit this, I think, is it's all very well working on a project, but how do we evaluate that project so that we can gain funding and support and recognise the changes and the differences that our activities make? So we're looking at at some point we'll look at an evaluative model. which is available to us. And then we'll look at the idea of revisit the idea of roles within community media and community development, and what kind of roles there are that people adopt, and the tasks and the dispositions and the kind of mindsets that people need in order to be able to understand how community media works. And it's really interesting, but the Community Media Association conference that I attended last week had a session by Hannah Parry on community development. And often it's a case that people think that they're running a community radio station. They think that they're writing a community newspaper. They're not. They're working in community development. So what does that mean? And particularly, what does that mean in a global scale, a global perspective, in the way that community media is used as part of not just a kind of Western model of thinking, but also an international and developmental model of thinking. So hopefully this ties in with the DMU Global trip that we've got planned, which John will tell you more information about in the workshops, and which will be advertised shortly via the DMU Global website. So a lot to get through as ever. The notes are available up on the wiki in advance. I'll try and stick to that pattern each week and get this video out each week as well in advance of the lecture, and then we can have a really good, vibrant discussion and maybe put some podcasts together, maybe do some blogging and all the usual things that we've become accustomed to these days. So I'll see you at the lecture.